We start in Ukraine, where the mayor of Kyiv has become one of the most senior Ukrainian politicians to suggest the country may have to give away territory as part of any peace deal with Russia. Speaking to the BBC, Vitali Klitschko acknowledged that such a decision would be unfair and painful, but could be a temporary solution to help end the fighting. The US wants Ukraine to accept Russian occupation of eastern Ukraine in return for a ceasefire. Despite the recent strikes on Kyiv that killed at least 12 people and injured 90 others, President Trump says he is continuing to put pressure on Russia to reach a peace deal. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is in Moscow today for talks with President Putin. In the US plan for peace, according to leaks, the deal would see Russia keep the territories that it now occupies in eastern Ukraine. The US will accept them as Russian. Russia will give up its ambition to control the rest of these 4 regions, land it has failed to secure militarily. In return, the US would accept Russian sovereignty over Crimea, which it illegally occupied in 2014. Our correspondent Anna Foster is in the Ukrainian capital and has been speaking to Mayor Klitschko, as well as assessing the overall situation with the proposed ceasefire deal.
Certainly when we look at the ceasefire proposal that the US is putting forward to these two sides, and we don't know the content of it, but we are now coming to the understanding that a lot of it is rooted in the idea of borders, of land and territory and control, and particularly in Ukraine, that is domestically a very sensitive issue. President Zelensky campaigned for that job, saying that he would never, for example, cede Crimea to Russia, and yet that is something that is now being suggested for peace. And what we have here in Ukraine today is one of the country's most powerful politicians, Vitali Klitschko, the mayor of this city, who I sat down with yesterday to talk about whether or not Ukraine should consider giving up some of its land. And he said, temporarily, he thought that perhaps they should. And we discussed whether or not those US talks are really moving these two countries any closer to a ceasefire. What should the international community, world leaders, the US and European leaders, what should they be doing differently now to try and get some kind of progress?
It's not an easy situation in Ukraine. It's difficult. We have the problems with many resources, financial resources, weapons, human resources, but Russians have not easy situation. They also have problems. Can you imagine one of the powerful men in the world? He present himself, Putin, go to North Korea asking about the weapons, asking about the soldiers. Endurance with quality. We have to be strong. We need support. We need support because everyone in Europe have to understand we defend not just our homeland. We're defending every one of you.
Do you think that Ukraine will have to give up territory to reach a ceasefire?
It's a very difficult political decision to give up our territory to Russia. It's not a solution. It's not fair.
Would you consider it if it brought peace?
It can be difficult decision for President Zelensky. He have to find solution. It will be a painful solution for the peace, but I guess we never accept occupation of Russia.
So you think it might have to happen?
Temporary, it happens, but for long term to accept the whole territory, whole Ukraine not belong to Ukraine anymore, belong to Russia. I guess Ukrainian people never accept that.
I understand. It's really difficult. It's really difficult because on one hand, as you say, it's your country, but on the other hand, people are dying every day. It's the hardest question. I realise it's really difficult to find an answer. But the pressure at the moment from the US seems to be that they want Ukraine to give up territory to try and end the war. That's what they think the solution is.
Right now, we doesn't take a solution. Right now, a lot of conversation about possible solution. And one of the scenario, what you say is to give up the territory. It's not fair, but for the peace, temporary peace, maybe it can be solution, temporary.
The relationship that President Zelensky and President Trump have is a very difficult one. It hasn't gone well in these last few weeks. What would you do differently if you were having those conversations? How would you approach it?
In position of Trump or position of Zelensky?
Good question. In Mr. Zelensky's position.
First of all, I want to say thank you, 1,000 times thank you for United States. And from beginning the war, American people United States give to Ukraine huge support, and we very appreciate for that. Without support, we can't survive. And it's ammunition, it's financial support, and it's political support. It's very, very important. We never ever forget friends and supporter of Ukraine.
And finally, what would your message be to President Putin after what he did to your city?
President Putin, I actually difficult to tell to him, to say to him something. President Putin seek with idea to rebuild empire. They don't pay attention for human lives, children lives. They don't pay attention for the blood, for millions of refugees, and destroy the cities and villages. They seek with crazy idea. It's not normal. We have the same religion, almost the same languages, we have almost the same history, but the idea, sick idea, destroyed relationship between two countries and bring instability in whole Europe, instability in the world. And right now, Putin sit in the corner. He can't explain to the people it was my mistakes. It was mistake. He have a dream to occupy Ukraine in a couple of days, and they expect the Ukrainian people will be very happy to see Russian soldier. It's a sick illusion. And to tell to Russian people it was my mistake, and the Russians country pay for these mistakes so huge price, thousand people killed. And that's why I guess Putin will be keeping the power until his last day.
Well, just a few hours before I spoke to Vitali Klitschko yesterday, there was a huge and deadly attack here in Kyiv, the deadliest in 9 months, and he had been that morning in the rubble of that attack. And even as those conversations about a ceasefire are going on at the highest level between Washington and Kyiv and Moscow, those attacks are continuing. Another one in the early hours of this morning in the city of Pavlorad, a drone attack, which the authorities say killed 3 people, one of them a child, injured 16 more, they say. 1 patient is seriously ill. More of them are in, they describe it as moderate condition in hospital. But these attacks, they continue every day. And that is why these conversations are being had here in Ukraine about how President Zelensky could and should approach those continuing conversations that are happening with Washington. And really, as you hear President Zelensky on the world stage, really calling for more support for this country, which continues to be attacked, ruthlessly attacked, mercilessly attacked, as you saw and heard there, by Russia, even as those ceasefire conversations are continuing.